It's that time of the week, ladies and gentlemen, time to look at the winners and the losers and who's been the most plankish. It's Plank of the Week. Welcome to Talk Radio TV and Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham, and I'm delighted to say that for the very first time, and we've got Claire Fox in the studio with us, who's going to be giving her version of Plank of the Week. Claire, very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us, and I'm sorry it's taken us so long to get you here.
I'm quite anxious, actually, because I kind of watch it, and now I'm on it.
And now you're on it. Well, don't do what James Well did, which was to nominate himself. Kevin O'Sullivan is here, a veteran of the team, and of course he'll be able to talk you through any problems that you might have. I think, Kevin, we should give Claire first dibs.
Absolutely.
Given that she hasn't done it before. So, Claire.
Glasses on, serious.
Glasses on, serious. Give us your first plank.
My plank is Antonio Guterres, who is the UN Secretary-General.
Yes.
Now, I was thinking about doing Just Stop Oil,
right,
those protesters, but I was irritated when Guterres said this. Climate activists are sometimes depicted as dangerous radicals, but the truly dangerous radicals are the countries that are increasing their production of fossil fuels.
Oh, for God's sake.
Now, we are in the middle of a serious emergency when it comes to not the climate, but energy.
Yes.
We've got enough of it. And what I really think is that the countries who are producing any fossil fuel should be celebrated, and we need them to be producing a lot more.
Absolutely.
But this idea of the UN General Secretary criticising nations for having an energy policy, when in fact, if anything, they haven't got a good enough energy policy. So, plank of the week for me.
Also, doesn't he know there's a war on in Ukraine?
I know.
Well, I mean, which the UN have been incredibly silent about, haven't they?
I'll tell you what the UN has been doing throughout this war. It has been profoundly underestimating the number of civilians who have been killed in the most horrible way. It has been actually sort of denigrating the war in terms of its seriousness by saying,
it's not much of a war.
I mean, we know thousands of people are dead in Mariupol alone. I believe that the UN is only, in the entire country, up to a few hundred right now.
Really?
So I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. But I agree with Claire entirely. In fact, she nicked my idea to nominate the same guy. But a very good choice, because when did the UN become this hectoring organisation lecturing the world about climate change? That's not what it's there for. Well,
and also, I think, countries, I mean, I'm a big fan of sovereignty.
Yes.
And the idea that the UN stands above countries and treats them like naughty children for, as he says,
as long as it's not Russia or China, obviously.
Exactly. I mean, that's what's so ironic about it. Is like the one thing in the world that you want countries to assert their ability to have an energy policy is now. By the way, fossil fuels. Can I just say, they're the opposite plank of the week. It drives me mad that fossil fuels have been treated as though they're an immoral sinner.
Yes.
And actually, fossil fuels are neutral and actually very necessary. We need to have fossil fuels, but even saying I like fossil fuels because I think they create energy is enough to get you cancelled in this day and age.
I mean, let's be honest. That on a T-shirt.
I often tell this story. That I moved into a house in Wiltshire once and discovered that there was a coal bunker that we hadn't known was there before. Found this coal bunker full of coal, right? Put coal on the fire. I was like, this is brilliant. This is unbelievable. It was so hot and so economical. You didn't need more than about half a dozen, lumps of it to keep the house really hot for the entire evening. Well, it's fantastic.
But it's also worth reminding ourselves that when we in Britain, or Boris in particular, starts polishing his halo and saying, look how much we're doing to save the planet. This country produces less than 1% of the world's pollution. China, for example, produces 28%.
Yes.
It's got 1,082 coal-fuelled power stations. It is currently building at least 300 more, and it is just instigated a project to explore for more coal.
Well, as AMS, hurrah for China on that thing only, because if you're a developing country and you want to have an industrial policy and you want to drag people out of poverty, I mean, I'm not trying to say this in relation to China because it could be India, right? You need fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are the power through which economic growth happens. Absolutely. And that's prosperity and that's wages, and that's the opposite of peasant economies where you're dragging around in dirt and poverty.
Well, this is the thing. In India, people now want air conditioning machines, and they now want cars, and they now want fridges.
I mean, it's outrageous, really, isn't it?
Isn't it
what
shocking?
gave them the idea that this was a good idea?
But these climate nutters, right, what they say is, no, well, don't worry about that. We'll just give you a load of money. you won't have to use fossil fuels, but we'll actually pay you not to use fossil fuels, like we're supposed to be subsidising their country. Give over. And also, who thought it was a great idea in Europe to stop using their own fossil fuels and buy it all from Russia?
Basically, the Germans.
Well done, guys.
But
Top idea that was.
Why does China have this policy? Why does India have a policy? Russia, Brazil, even Australia, by the way. Why do they
like a bit of coal.
concentrate on fossil fuels? Because it provides very cheap energy for the people. And we in this country are now finding out what it means when you abrogate fossil fuels, when you say, no coal, don't get anywhere near us. It costs you a fortune. And the people can't afford it here. They can't afford it in China. They can't afford it around the world. You're right, Claire. We've got to recalibrate our attitude to fossil fuels and start seeing them as an asset, not the kind of devil's work.
Yeah. Absolutely right. I mean, I had a laugh this week where a broadcaster whose name I shall not mention because he's from another place. So I've started using this.
The other place.
The other place. Right? The other place. He has an electric Audi, right? Drove it from Beverley in Yorkshire down to Tunbridge, right? It took him, I think, 11 hours because every time he stopped to refill the charge, there was somebody else at the thing. So he had to wait like a couple of hours. And that's the trouble. You can't, and Sky did this as well. They drove from London to Glasgow. Tried to do it in an electric car. It took 15 hours because you pull into a place, there's 3 electricity power outlets. 2 of them don't work. One of them's got somebody there. You got to sit there.
None of us are opposed to innovation. I'm into all sorts of energy sources being looked at. But the idea that we close down certain energy sources on the basis that they're immoral, with this sort of threat that if you go down this route, we're going to destroy the planet. What we're doing is we're destroying the living standards and the wealth that you need to be innovative. That's what's so ironic. I mean, if you're going to have innovation and change in relation to new energy sources, you need to have a thriving economic base. But of course, we're cowardly because we outsource it. You know, as long as we're not doing that dirty old coal,
that's
but what about you know, for example, you're right. Our energy policy is based around slogans and words. You know, so it's renewable, therefore it's good. You know, so you have in Yorkshire the Drax power station, which used to be a backup power station for when the wind turbines, when the wind wasn't blowing and the sun wasn't shining. So they had to go back to old-fashioned power sources, i.e. gas. Of course, gas is not a renewable. Therefore, they converted the Drax power station from gas to wood-powered. And now that we have to ship in millions of tons of wood from all over the world, really in an environmental way. And then we fire all this stuff up. That's our backup power source, and it bellows tons and tons and tons of pollution into the atmosphere, far more than gas ever would. There you have it. The insanity of our energy policies summed up.
I think that's absolutely right. It's a good start, though. What's your first plank?
I'm going to go for a guy called Paul Fotheringham.
Oh, yes.
He is the president of the Police Superintendents Association. He's just taken over this job and he's come up with a great idea. He's decided that since every other public sector worker seems to work from home, so the police should work from home. He wants coppers to work from home. I mean,
Evening all.
I mean, I could go into the pitfalls of this scheme, but it's just clearly insane. Coppers need to go into the police station. They need to have a briefing every day. They need to have senior officers. They need to have discipline. And Fotheringham says that one of the great things about working from home is it will make the police a more attractive career, a more attractive place to work, and therefore we'll get a more inclusive police force that is more representative of the community. Do you want to know about something that I couldn't care less about, couldn't give a rat's backside about, whether or not the police force is inclusive and representative of the community? What I'd like the police force to do is to start solving burglaries, to start investigating when I get beaten up in the street.
Also, I don't care if it's not an attractive job. Do you?
No, I don't. No, exactly. Do the job. Fight crime, make the streets safer, do your damn job, stop thinking about yourselves and start thinking about the public you're supposed to serve.
But think about the whole madness of this. They're saying we will be more representative of the community, but we'll all be sitting at home and the community will never see us, so we'll know, right? I mean, one of the things that the community wants is more community policing, isn't it? I mean, the one thing that everybody and anybody wants is it's not that they're kind of checking how many box identities you've got represented in the... There are no police to check.
No.
I mean, you want to be able to see them walking around. And the way that policing has always worked, certainly at a local level, is that you kind of know. And this is not like going, I want to go back to the old days of Dixon, of Doc Green. I'm just saying that's how you find out intelligence. You find out who the bad guys are. People say to you, do you know there's something touchy? You go, it's all that sort of thing. But also you get to know Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They've got a few problems. They've got kids. You keep breaking the window. You kind of community policing.
Yeah. And if
they
you're,
are
and if you're a
abandoning
villain
the
now,
community.
If you're a villain now, I would imagine you don't fear the police because you never see them.
Well,
The chances of you getting caught are so remote now, and even if you do get caught, the chances of you getting actually convicted are also remote. Was it 6% or something?
Yeah, the vast
of crime?
majority of crimes are never, ever
6%
solved.
of crime ends up being solved. I mean, that means 94% of it doesn't.
Yeah, and the reason that lots and lots of crimes don't get solved is because they don't get investigated in the first place.
Yeah.
Excuse me, officer, I've had my car stolen, so what?
Yeah.
I've been beaten up in the street, so what?
Yeah.
My wife's been raped, oh, well, we won't bother with that
Yeah.
because that's difficult to prosecute. The other thing this guy, Fotheringham, said...
Which force is he with, this guy?
Well, he used to be the chief superintendent of Kent,
Right.
but he's now president of this body of, chief superintendents generally.
Right.
And he the other thing he said, well, we have to come up with these kind of ideas like working from home because, of course, in the public sector, we can't offer such attractive job packages as they come
What
as
a
they
load of
can in the
cobblers.
public sector. In the private sector, and you think, hey, Mr. Fotheringham, where have you been for the last 20 years?
Well, that used to be the case, didn't it? The idea of public service was that you got a relatively low-paying job, but it had good
Great
conditions,
pension and job security.
a really good pension, and you could probably retire. Certainly in the police, you could retire. I knew police officers when I was growing up who were retiring at like 50.
Well, they still do.
Right?
Well, without idealising it, there was some sense of public service. I mean, I've been on the wrong end of the police a fair bit as being sort of like the kind of person who'd go out on, picket lines and demos and so on. So I'm not trying to in any way kind of go, what lovely people they are. But they had a sense of what their job was, right? And they were, in many ways... they represented the state and there was an authority there, and we know that that's collapsed. But you've got two different things going on, because it did strike me that one of the things that they will be able to solve crime sitting at home, because a lot of what they consider to be crime is, for example, people putting out hateful tweets.
Yeah.
So you can do that from anywhere, right?
Yeah.
They're probably, as we speak, going through the Twitter feed of this, of Talk Radio going, oh, hate crime, hate crime,
there's
hate
hate
crime.
crime,
So
yeah.
we've given them these mad jobs of what we see crimes are. On the one hand, you can do them from home. But on the other hand, there's an authoritarian side, by the way, which is, yesterday we were discussing live facial recognition technology that's being brought in under the auspices of the College of Policing, their guidance, no legislative scrutiny at all.
Right.
And they're basically saying that they can put you on a database of facial recognition if you're a witness or if you're a victim or if you're an associate of somebody that they think may cause harm in an area.
Oh, my God. Well, so they can keep that on file?
And they can keep it on file. This facial recognition. But one of the things was we just got rid of this non-crime hate incident database.
Right.
Well, just about got rid of it, because this was College of Policing as well. And now they're basically saying that it's a crime to, as somebody, never mind the hate bit, it's non-crime harms are now justification for the police to be keeping surveillance and tabs on you. So you've got a kind of weird thing. They're more authoritarian on the one hand, more scary, the way they treated,
But actual
let's be
criminal
honest.
activity, no.
Well, actual criminal activity, nowhere to be seen.
Also, this whole
you wanna-
nonsense as well. Sorry, this whole nonsense about working from home being more effective. It's not more effective for
if
certain
you're a
jobs.
copper.
Not if you're a copper, but also not in my experience. If you're somebody who's dealing with, I don't know, just a regular inquiry about an electricity bill or something, you can hear kids running around the background, dogs barking. Oh, sorry, we haven't got that database available. Well, get in the bleeding office then.
I know working from home is a scourge, and it's extraordinary what Claire was just saying. If you think about it, we have a whole generation of coppers who don't even raise an eyebrow that they're sitting there recording incidents that have the word non-crime in them. Well, if it's a non-crime, what on earth are the police involved for? It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, they might as well start looking into people's kitchens and saying, well, you're making that the wrong way.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but we're getting there, right? We're getting there.
I know.
I mean, they are overly intrusive into the policing of everyday life in a kind of micromanaging way.
Yeah.
But the job of crime busting, or solving the odd crime, as you say. But the other thing that I noticed, I mean, I on the occasions that I've actually been the victim of crimes, the one thing they're very good at is sending you around a kind of victim support. Or they phone you up and say, you're a victim of crime, can we help?
Yes.
You want us to come round and talk to you?
Yeah.
And you go, no.
Not really.
I want you to find the person who broke in.
Yeah.
But they everything is done in the sort of mode of modern therapeutic stuff, right? Which is to make sure you feel okay about it, but not to actually solve the crime.
I actually got called in for an interview after somebody nicked my shirts from the dry cleaners, which is a kind of bizarre crime, very odd crime.
How many shirts did you?
About 7. And they were really nice shirts, but apparently there's this...
reported to the police.
Well, of course, because I had to get the insurance or something.
Yeah,
right?
I'm with you, yeah.
But they took me in and they gave me this big, long interview and said, how did you feel after the crime? I said, well...
Violated.
I was a bit disappointed because it's one of my favourite shirts. I've never got it back. And apparently there's a massive market in like Bermondsey and places where they sell second-hand shirts, but they're all in cellophane. And they're all nice shirts.
Academy of Ideas offices
there
in
you
Bermondsey.
go.
We might pop along.
At the Bermondsey market on a Saturday, you might find my shirts. I'm looking for the red and white striped one particularly, but anyway, that's another story. Right, my first plank of the week, given that we're all under pressure, given that we have got cost of living crisis on our hands, given that we're about to pay 1.25% more in our national insurance bill, what did the MPs decide to do? They decided to give themselves a pay rise, £2,212, which makes their now basic salary £84,144 a year. Now, aside from the fact that I know all the arguments about, they don't make those decisions, it's chosen for them by this independent committee. I mean, I'm not buying that for a start, because the first thing you do if you want to have no responsibility is set up a committee. They told us to have a pay rise. They didn't get one last year. Oh, great. Well, neither did I, actually. I mean, you are the first Baroness we've had on the show. I don't know what happens in the House of Lords, but I mean, it seems to me that 84 grand, and some of these MPs also put in massive amounts of expenses. I'm not going to mention that David Warburton guy because he's clearly a complete and utter plank, but I wouldn't mind getting some of the expenses back in case he spent any of it on illicit substances and make various other things that he was up to.
He has enormous amounts of defence, mate.
Well, I think defence is not the word he meant to use. He's got enormous amounts of illegal class. No, sorry, that's just a joke, obviously. Boris Johnson and Sir Keir Starmer are apparently both against the pay rise, which shows you how much power they have and influence. I mean, I don't know how it works, Claire, but would you expect individual MPs, who I haven't seen any of saying this, saying, look, actually, I don't want it. Don't give it to me.
I doubt very much. You see, if an individual MP did that, it really would be virtue signalling, wouldn't it? Because it's not like it would go into the public purse, as it were, right?
No.
I think that I
suppose you could donate it to charity.
Well, you could do that, but then you'd be doing it so that people would see that you would. I mean, that's all I'm saying is, and then
they don't vote on it themselves.
And then you're telling everyone.
No, but that's a cop-out, isn't it?
But what I'd say is no. But I understand why people. I know why you brought it up because. Usually I don't like the term optics, but there is just something distasteful.
It's bad optics.
It is bad optics.
I mean, we're all badly
when
off.
Everyone is like, really worrying. And you we'll all know people, and you get people calling in both your shows, and I know people who are genuinely really frightened of poverty. Probably for the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always been, of course, some very poor people, but I'm talking about...
I had a woman on last night crying her eyes out. But she's a retired nurse. Her husband's just died. She's 69. She's I really don't think I can do this. I don't think I can make... And she's crying down the phone.
No.
And there are millions of people like that.
There are. And people who would not have considered themselves in the kind of poor brackets...
Exactly.
...are really scared and don't... like you're calling, I mean, just don't know what to do. They're desperate. So, of course, you're going to feel bitter. Now, it has to be said on the Baroness front, so the House of Lords, you don't get paid, you see, you get a daily allowance.
Yeah. But you have to turn up for that, don't you?
You do have to turn up for it. But it is £300, right? So it's not nothing. But if you went in every day of being if you went in every single day, you'd earn about 35 grand. I mean, in other words, there's lots of days when you're not allowed to go.
Right.
So, but other people have jobs and then you get your daily allowance. With MPs, it's their job, right? You can always say, I don't think MPs should earn that much. They're not worth it. And it's because we're so cynical about politicians. But what I object to is that they don't appear to be earning this money. I mean, that, in a way, why we're bitter is you wouldn't even think about it if you thought they were doing a good job.
No. And also I mean, and there's a lot of unfairness in the arguments, and I know all that, and people will say, oh, but some of them do an awful lot of work in their constituencies, and some of them do, but some of them don't as well. And the point is that they're actually on recess at the moment when everybody else is at work.
Exactly.
Now, you can tell me if you want that they're all working very hard in their constituencies, but they won't all be. And so therefore, and they're also in receipt, I believe, Kevin, of an amount of money for their heating allowance.
Well,
and, when everybody else is struggling to pay their electricity bill and their gas bill, which has basically doubled and maybe tripled in a year, these guys are getting a subsidy for it, which is untenable, really.
But when you say, Claire, absolutely, but when you say, Claire, that, this is real, this cost of living crisis, the worst since the 1970s. If you remember Rishi Sunak's spring statement a couple of weeks ago, it was quite evident that this guy has no concept of the fact this is real. He thought it was an opportunity for him to do a showbizy, dazzling speech. Not 1 pence, not 2 pence, but 5 pence. It's like, what is this? Like kind of the X Factor or something.
That was a crap, wasn't it?
I thought
at least if he'd ended up with 50 pence or something, but he ended up with 5.
But with that, and I think Boris and I think half the cabinet, I think they really don't understand that millions of people are staring into the abyss here.
Yeah. Totally.
And it's after lockdowns, you see.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, partly created by lockdowns, not totally, but partly created by the cost of what decisions were made by those people about how closing down the economy for 2 years is not good for the economy, generally speaking, right? I mean, no productive activity went on, right?
It's not good for the economy.
So, and then they sort of come back, and obviously we know there are other factors, but then part of the other factors is they haven't got an energy policy, right? So then we discover that that's a problem. So all of these things mean that I think that the bitterness about their salaries are to do with the fact that people feel very let down. And then when you're saying about people, the realness of it for people, I think they've also had 2 years of lockdown, of uncertainty about their jobs. A lot of people have lost businesses. If they're freelancers, they lost a lot of work. So they were starting off nervous. And now suddenly they really are thinking, I have not got enough money.
And this also feeds in the end to what you were saying, Kevin, that they don't really have a clue because they're all insulated from it all. Everything they do is basically paid for. The one bright light, I suppose, is that the Downing Street people have said they're going to freeze the additional ministerial salaries, which is still quite substantial, but at least they're not giving them a pay rise, so that's something. But, everything, I remember the good old days when we worked in Fleet Street and you could have, I don't get expenses now because they've more or less made it impossible to claim anything, but there was a time when you could. But these guys are claiming everything. They're still claiming.
The expenses stuff, I think, has always been highly controversial. I mean, the argument has been give them more pay and cover it all. Do you know what I mean? Let them have 100 grand if that's what you decide. I mean, that might not go down well. But then don't claim any expenses because expenses, as anyone who's ever claimed them will know, are always a bit dodgy.
Give an allowance.
Confirm that.
No, let me tell you. I mean, I used to know people in the media. I've never worked for anyone where that would, but I used to know people in the media, and I'd be up at things like the Edinburgh TV Festival, eye-watering what kind of expenses were available. And of course, politicians have had that. And like you said, the thing is, if you can put a claim in, you never really know what it feels like to go, I've got to pay the bill. And I don't want to pretend. I am worried about the cost of living, but it's not going to lead to penury in my life, right? But I know enough people in my family and in my lives that are really... And when I talked to an elderly relative the other day and she was saying, I just couldn't get warm, but I put the fire on for half an hour. I'm thinking, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Because I want to say...
reality.
And, of course, the other thing is I want to say, I'll pay.
Yeah.
Stick it on all day, every day. She's not having that.
No.
Her whole family would help. But that's not the way it works, you see. People say, I'm not going to ask This is a real
No,
problem.
people are ashamed of not being able to run their own
because
home.
it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
You don't want to be able to
No, of
say,
course
I
not.
haven't got any food.
But this is where the government's policies are wrong as well, because it's not for them to then subsidise people who can't afford to pay extortionate prices for something that should be cheaper.
Exactly.
That's my view.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's the first round of the planks. We'll be back with more plankery after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week with Kevin O'Sullivan, me, Mike Graham, and Claire Fox. As I said earlier, the first Baroness to be here. Claire, who's your second plank?
I want to go for somebody who was a fellow politician of mine, an MEP,
Oh, yes.
Guy Verhofstadt.
Oh, yes, I remember him. We don't hear about him much. We used to hear about him every week, didn't we?
The problem is that I still hear too much from him. Anyway, he basically said after the results of the Hungary election came out, in which Orban won, he said, hate prevails over hope as a free but unfair election, a dark day for liberal democracy, for Hungary and the EU at a perilous time.
How is it a free but unfair election? What's that, then?
Well, I don't know. I think he can't accuse him of being unfree, but anyway. But the point about it was that I really thought, this is incredible, isn't it? A lot of talk from the EU, from everyone else, about we support sovereignty of Ukraine, right? And, you know, suddenly there's an election in an EU member state, in Hungary, and they all, Guy Verhofstadt's just one of many, who basically say, absolutely unfair, cheated, how did he win? And it's like, he got voted for by the people of Hungary. And that is what democracy is like.
I actually
You're
heard
annoyed the wrong people voted.
I actually heard a pundit explaining this to somebody the other day on another, again, in another place. And he was like, sort of, the presenter was incredulous. As he said, well, what is it that people like about this Viktor Orban? He said, well, he's very popular. You know, a lot of people voted for him. A lot of people like what he's doing. And the presenter was kind of shaking his head, going, but how can that be? Because he's all the things that we don't like.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is that they can't understand why it is. I mean, one thing to say is it never, ever is allowed to be that the opposition were rubbish. And the opposition in Hungary were particularly rubbish, right? Because they were a combination. Basically, every single opposition party got together. So that meant the Greens and the far right and everything in between, they all joined together and said, we're the opposition. And even they couldn't stop him, right? So what happened was that he's popular. And he represents, I think, Orban, a lot of his politics, not to my taste by any stretch, but he represents national self-interest of Hungary.
And the people of Hungary agree with him.
Exactly. I mean, it's also interesting because I'm very interested in obviously in Ukraine, and a lot of people are saying he's Putin's puppet, and it is true that Orban is definitely not condemning Russia.
No.
He's definitely not going full in supporting...
He has condemned Ukraine.
I mean, the thing is, though, at the end of the day, he doesn't have to, does he?
But he doesn't have to. And But the other thing is that it is quite interesting because when I was in the EU, when I was in the European Parliament for that very brief moment as an MEP, Hungary and Poland were both treated like naughty children, humiliated at all times.
Well, they kept threatening them with pulling their money, didn't they?
Well, only a few weeks ago, the EU actually issued fines against Hungary and Poland for breaking the rules of the EU.
Right.
As Poland, fully behind Ukraine, was accepting... What is
millions.
it? Over 1 million, millions of refugees. So it doesn't really matter. They don't like the Polish democratic decisions of the Polish people or the Hungarian people. And I think that it's just something about the double standards on sovereignty and the way that democracy these days is only considered to count if you vote the right person, right? And it just drives me mad.
But it's about Verhofstadt and the EU. I mean, they've come up with this new concept that democratic decisions can be definitively wrong. Well, actually, definitively, they can't.
No, they can't.
They cannot be.
No.
And yet the EU said, oh, well, you know, the thing about the Brexit vote is it was wrong. It's a mistake. It shouldn't stand.
Right.
Hence,
we don't agree with it.
You know, hence the same with Hungary. You know, Hungary is now an interesting country insofar as it's a member of NATO, but it supports Russia.
It really is. Kevin, who's your second one?
It's a story from a week ago, but it's worth.
It missed the cut actually on Planks last week because it didn't happen by Tuesday.
Yeah, so it's the Disney Corporation. It's actually the General Entertainment President and Director of Content, Carrie Burke. Who has announced that
Burke of the week, not blank.
By name
doesn't translate to American.
She has announced that I've got to get these letters right. That from now on, at least 50% of all Disney fictional characters will be LGBTQIA.
Is it IA?
And that
Because
when
I
you
always
go
stop
to
at I normally.
and when you go, I've no idea what all those mean, but there you go. It'll be the whole alphabet fairly soon, won't it? And when you go to one of the Disney theme parks, Euro Disney or Disney World or Disneyland, instead of being greeted as ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, you will now be greeted as dreamers and friends.
Oh, my God.
Because it's gender non-specific.
You know, I didn't think of this until now, but what are they going to call the Magic Kingdom?
Well,
Because that's got sort of male connotations, doesn't it? King?
The magic non-personage-dom. But it's
not much of a
Disney,
fairy
if they
tale.
carry on like this, the thing that, you know, I mean, it's a private company. They're able to do whatever they want, but trust me, they're making a mistake. They will discover that if you go broke, if you go woke, you'll go broke. And the thing about their LGBTQI proposition, 50% of characters will be LGBTQI, or from ethnic minorities. That is not representative of real life.
No, it isn't.
So when the punters, when the public watch their movies, they will not relate to them. They'll go, hang on, I don't recognise this, and they won't like them, and Disney won't make any money, and they will discover, all of these executives at what used to be the happiest company on earth, that while they were busy polishing their own halos, virtue signalling their wonderfulness to the world, the consumers stopped being interested in their products.
Also, I'm not really worried about whether the Little Mermaid is, you know, LBGTQI or A. Are you?
No, but the thing that is contradictory, even actually, in what Kevin said, was she says this is in order to represent the real world.
Yeah.
I think you're Disney.
Right.
There is no such thing as a mermaid.
Exactly
what are you talking
right.
about? I mean, it's like it makes.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a very
like, what
good
are they?
point.
I mean, Mickey Mouse or whatever. All I'm saying is that mice don't wear dresses and don't speak. I mean, like it's like it's an imaginative world, and one of the things that's been fantastic about Disney over the years is that for children and young people, well, and occasionally adults, you kind of watch these things and you're transported away into a world of make-believe and wonder.
Right.
And actually, this absolute imposition of an ideology into this is so destructive, because now you're going to have box ticking. Because you can't just be a writer and just say, look, I've thought of a thing, but I'm going to write a story about a flying elephant, right? You know, with big, it's a mad idea, isn't it? But then it works because it's Dumbo and all the rest, but now they'll be saying, yes, but what's the gender acquisition? You know, and are we making sure
mad. It's
anything
totally
you do
mad.
like that will destroy artistic creativity in a big way?
You've got to feel sorry for sort of children who haven't been born yet, because they're going to be watching this rubbish and going, what's this all about?
Yeah, well, Disney, I mean, the brilliant slogan used to be, it was the company that produced films and theme parks for children of all ages.
Yeah.
Very clever.
Yeah.
And Disney was the cleverest entertainment corporation the world had ever seen. It worked out a formula for entertainment that not only worked in California and New York, it also worked in Britain, it worked in France, it worked in China, it worked all over the world. They understood the universal principles that unite humanity. Now they are abrogating that, they're moving away from that, and they're busy, as I say, polishing their own halos, saying, oh, there's going to be 50% LGBTQI. Well, you know, that isn't what the world's like. And if people do not recognise reality, at least a semblance of reality in these products, they will not buy them.
No.
And if Disney's not careful, it's going to go broke.
I thought when I listened to her, she was joyless, condescending, and talk about in a bubble.
Oh, yeah.
She said, oh, I've talked to people and this will make them all...
Yeah, she
and
talked
she
to all
said
the
it in a
people
way, I thought,
around the dinner
it was
table.
satire.
Yeah.
You know, like when
No,
you
'cause I only
watch
thought
something
she's got
and I
By the way,
thought-
she's got a trans daughter and a non-binary daughter.
Yeah, and
she lives in
I
California,
think
right?
it's
Funny
also
enough.
the case that those poor kids, no disrespect to their wonderful mother, but you do think that's not surprising, really, is it?
It's really not.
No, because what you would do is you would, in order to conform almost to your mother's expectation of what an interesting person is, you couldn't just go, no,
No.
Actually, I'm just your daughter.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly
it'd be
right.
too boring. You
Do you
wouldn't.
mind? Can we
Carrie
just go
Burton's
watch a
very
film?
keen on bringing up her non-binary
Yeah.
and trans daughter.
Of course she is.
You know, because it fits into her image of herself.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, you know, as I say, too many, loads and loads of companies are doing this now.
Absolutely.
They're just focusing on themselves, on their own
And it's just a message,
wonderfulness, their own virtue, and they don't care about the consumers. They're almost contemptuous of the consumers. That way, broke madness lies.
It does, indeed. Speaking of broke madness, the other way to break your company is to not be very good at what you do. British Airways, for me, second plank, because they've been cancelling flights right, left and centre. And this is now something that the travel industry is doing. And I'm singling British Airways out, partly because they've got now such a history of being useless. I mean, it was only a week or two ago where their entire IT system fell over again. So nobody could get on a plane. And people were turning up with their boarding passes and they were going, oh, sorry, we can't actually process your luggage. We can't actually get you to where you want to go. And they're now saying, oh, well, the thing is, you know, the travel industry's been on its knees for 2 years. Now it's really busy. We can't cope. Well, it's like, well, why can't you cope? It's what you do.
But it's also so frustrating because I remember throughout the kind of lockdown periods, I constantly probably did it on either of your shows at some point, defending the travel industry, defending the airlines, saying this is terrible, they're going to be destroyed by this. They want to get back to work, I kept saying. Stop bringing in all these travel restrictions. And then there's no travel restrictions and they go, but you can't fly anyway.
No,
right?
because all the planes are in the wrong place and we haven't got enough pilots.
It's an indication, though, of what lockdown did. It's almost like people forgot how to do their job.
Yeah, I think
it's like,
so.
sort of like they basically forgot. It's like, well, you're an airline. You're meant to cope with this, right? And you're too busy.
Well,
this is a good thing. You could have planned for this.
Their latest excuse is, well, it's very busy because it's Easter holidays. You're you're an airline. What the hell do you think people want?
But it's like they imagine that you can, because people were so disappointed and you know, constantly booking holidays that got cancelled because the government had changed the rules or some other government had changed the rules. It's almost like the airlines think that it is acceptable that you go to an airport to go on your holidays and they go, sorry, cancelled. It's not acceptable.
No, it's really not.
The plane needs to go. You need to be on it.
The staff have got
And
COVID.
people, and that's
they
the
keep
other
saying
thing.
that everyone's got COVID.
And they were saying,
more staff.
we've sent them all home. Why? There's nothing wrong with any of them. Anyway, we're running slightly late, so we're going to go and take a little break here. And coming back, we're going to get the final round of the planks of the week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week with me, Mike Graham. Kevin O'Sullivan is here. Claire Fox is here as well. Kevin, I'll come to you for your third and final plank. Who is it?
It's the NHS on its
Excellent.
website. It has declared that there are a number 9 new symptoms that will indicate you've got COVID. Now, this coincides with the end of free testing. So what the NHS, in my view, is counting on is that people won't go and buy themselves tests. They'll just check the website. So I'll just quickly read out what might indicate you've got COVID, or will indicate you've got COVID. High temperature or shivering, a new continuous cough, a loss or change in taste or smell, shortness of breath, feeling tired or exhausted, an aching body, a headache, a sore throat, a blocked or runny nose, loss of appetite, diarrhea, feeling sick or being sick. In other words, just about every minor ailment you ever get. So people will not buy tests because they're used to getting free ones. So they will diagnose, they'll self-diagnose, and you know, this actually could be a hangover or something like that.
It's great for train drivers.
You have 9 pints the night before and you wake up in the morning, you look at this list, oh, I got COVID.
Yeah.
No, you haven't, you got a hangover.
The thing is, the worst thing they're saying is, and if you have these symptoms, you shouldn't go to work.
Exactly.
So it basically gives the green light to, guess what?
People who don't want to go to work.
Flights, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
exactly right. But that's the problem.
There will be a productivity crisis that is deeper than anything we face at the very time when we're in the middle of recessionary trends. Because you're basically saying to everybody who works, you don't need to go into work. You've now got an ample excuse. I mean, it's obviously the case that every single one of those symptoms, you know, I mean, you know, I've had COVID for the last year. Because I have at various times had those symptoms,
Aching
right?
body, that means I've got it on a 24/7 basis.
So I think it's so horrible because we are socialising young people into saying, feel ill, don't move. Right? We used to say,
just take the rest
you know,
of the
you
week
feel
off.
ill,
Perpetuation.
get up, shake yourself down. I mean, you only took time off.
It's the
If you
perpetuation.
were really poorly.
I know.
It's the perpetuation of COVID neurosis.
It is.
It's a massive problem here.
Exactly.
And I think the NHS wants this to carry on. As you said on your show this morning, Mike, Hampshire NHS is now actively and openly pursuing the impossible dream of zero
COVID.
It's not going to happen. And this is a pernicious thing to do. We're discovering now that all we needed to do 2 years ago was to actually say, if you get COVID, hard luck. That's the way it
just
goes.
carry on.
Carry on. Crack
Exactly
on.
right. Claire.
That's what we're doing now.
Claire, your final plank?
The blob at number 10.
The blob.
Bit
How is the
faceless,
Prime
but we all
Minister?
but we all know who we mean, and the Prime Minister is definitely part of it. Yeah. So the government, in their wisdom, decided that they would introduce a conversion therapy bill. It was pointed out to them by anybody that would listen that actually there is not examples of up and down the country people being converted away from being gay or lesbian, that this would be used undoubtedly to attack and criminalise therapists who, for example, are working with gender dysphoric kids or young people and basically saying, consider that maybe you don't want to change your gender and so on and so forth. They looked at the bill. They very sensibly got all the information together. They said, we don't need a law for this. We should drop it. Then we get the leaks which say, when we drop it, there'll be a massive backlash, but we've got to hold our nerve. We are not doing anything wrong. Anyway, that got leaked. Within 10 minutes, number 10 said,
Amazing.
We've changed our mind. We're bringing back the conversion therapy bill because lots of people in the trans community are up in arms and outraged and demanding that we bring it back. So they literally was like, I watched it happen in real
Absolutely
time.
hopeless.
And then they said, but we'll bring it back, but we won't have trans in it, and that'll solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
So they've managed to alienate everyone.
Right.
And I would like to say as well that included in this conversion therapy bill, which doesn't include trans, which now makes it look like they are being bigoted, by the way.
Yeah.
They're implying that there is a problem of all around the country, people trying to stop people being lesbian and gay.
It's absolutely bonkers.
Occasionally, people who are gay say, I don't want to be gay because I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a bit bonkers to me. And they go to a prayer group.
Yeah.
Those people can now be done. So even though I'm an atheist, in defence of religious freedom, I still don't want this
It's madness.
conversion.
Absolute madness. I've got to stop because we're really running out of time. My final one is Mayor Eric Adams of New York. I thought when Bill de Blasio left, it might return to some kind of normality. But this guy's insisting that kindergarten children under the age of 5 must continue to wear masks when they go to their little schools. But that's the end of the 3 rounds of Plankery. We're going to come back and tell you who has won Plank of the Week. We've been so busy talking that we've almost run out of time, so we're going to have to do this a little bit quicker than we normally would. Claire, tell us who your favourite plank is of your own.
Number 10, Blob, because I can blame them for absolutely everything that we've discussed today because they're responsible for so much that's wrong in the world.
Excellent. Kevin, yours?
I think I'll go for the Disney Entertainment president, Carrie Burke, who is steering Disney right down the wrong direction like the rest of Hollywood. They're all going woke and they're all going to go broke.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the MPs as well for their pay rise that they've given themselves, even though they go, oh, we didn't mean to. Right, so who's your favourite plank out of those? We've got the MPs, we've got the number 10 Blob, I'll call that Downing Street, and Claire from Disney.
No, it's Carrie Burke.
Sorry, Carrie Burke.
Yeah, Claire.
Sorry, I don't know if I've got Claire in my head.
Blank, can we, when I'm on? I really have to be Carrie, really.
I think it does.
I think it does.
Burke of the Week.
You couldn't make her up. Burke of the Week, Plank of the Week.
Yeah.
She's got a double title.
I think that wins, and we'll give you Downing Street's number 2, give the MPs, just because it wasn't their decision, number 3. So well done to, what's her name?
Carrie Burke.
Carrie Burke, Burke of the Week, Plank of the Week. We'll see you next time.